Okay, as follows. Let me start like this. By amongst the early Chassidish Rebbes, there were some Rebbes who had like a joyous, almost jocular disposition. They were always happy, freilich, sometimes even making jokes. And some of them were very, very, very serious, extremely intense Rebbes. And in the courts where there was a very, very intense Rebbe, there sometimes was a batchen, like a part of the court. There was a court jester, someone to keep the Rebbe, to keep everything in a good mood. The mashal by Baruch of Meshbej, who was like a famous Rebbe who was very, very strict and exacting and was never one to make jokes. So he had someone called Heshela Strapali, who was part of his court, who would make jokes and keep the atmosphere, light. Supposedly, Hershel Astrapali once took it too far, and the Chassidim beat him up. Maybe he even died from it. A lot of different legends. Recently, they found the grave in Meshbej, amongst the few kvarim that are there, that they think might be Hershel Astrapali's grave. But this was something that was common and different. The Chayze had a batchen in the court, and then there were some Rebbes who were, a little bit lighter, and they were able to make jokes, and they were a little bit jocular. One who was very famous for being, sharp and light was the Ropshitzer. Naphtali of Ropshitz was like a very, very sharp lines that he had, and they were always like a little funny. So it once happened that a chassid, who was a simple person, came over to Naphtali of Ropshitz, and he asked him, I noticed that on Erev Shabbos, when you cut your nails before Shabbos, you cut your nails, you go to the mikveh first, and then you cut your nails. And by a lot of other tzaddikim that I dreizich by, I saw that they cut the nails first and then they go to the mikveh. How come by you it's backwards? So the Ropshitzer told him, such a thing, I can't be megala this without proper preparation. He says, "Edaftach fasten a dreidel," which means bahab. Monday, Thursday, Monday, you have to fast for 3. You have to fast for three, a sidra of fast before I could tell you this. So this guy went with full seriousness and he fasted Monday, Thursday, Monday. He comes back to the Ropshitzer on Erev Shabbos and he says, No, I'm ready to hear, Rebbe. Tell me what's the reason. And the Ropshitzer tells him, I'm going to tell it to you, but you can't repeat it to anybody. The reason is, Val Zizen and Vaich. After I go to the mikveh, they're soft. My nails are much softer after I just was just in a bath, and it's easier to cut them. And, this chassid left with that. And then afterwards, the Ropshitzer turned to his close chassidim, to the people who did understand, what the Ropshitzer was all about, and he told them, be'emes. The reason is, Val Zizen and Vaich. And not what you think, soft, because they're physically soft, because it's soft to cut nails then. So what the Ropshitzer was talking about is a certain inyan, there's like very, very big Kabbalistic inyanim that are tied up in nail cutting on Erev Shabbos and always. So let's talk about some of them. Now and we'll see maybe what the Ropshitzer meant, the weichkeit of cutting nails after the mikveh. B'chaleifin, the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Samach in Ar Chaim brings down that on every Erev Shabbos, a person is supposed to cut his nails. The Mechaber says, mitzvah lirchitz kol gufay, panav yad v'ragla b'chamim b'Erev Shabbos, and mitzvah lachav v'roish, u'legaleh chatzi pernayim b'Erev Shabbos, and to cut the nails on Erev Shabbos. This is the Mechaber. Now, this is not a Gemara. There's no Gemara that says that a person is mechuyev to cut his nails on Erev Shabbos. It comes from Rishonim. There's no Gemara that says it. The Mechaber paskins, if you look in the Beis Yosef, the Beis Yosef brings it from a kolboy, from an Archas Chaim, from some of the Gedolei Rishonim. I'd say that a person is supposed to cut his nails on Erev Shabbos. Now, the Mechaber paskins like this, but he doesn't say a reason. He just says a person should cut his nails on Erev Shabbos. So now, l'chayra, there's 3 potential reasons for cutting nails on Erev Shabbos, and there's going to be nafkaminas between all of them. And they rank, on a spectrum of halacha and Kabbala. So let's see, and male the nafkaminas will be. The first one, kipshutai, like it says in the Ritva and it says in the Archas Chaim, is that it's not covered for Shabbos to come into Shabbos kishum menuvel. You don't come into Shabbos when you're all beaten up. You come, you get dressed up, you wash yourself up, you come in your finest. So you cut your nails, kipshuta. You want to come in, proper, prim and proper the way you come in. And that's the basic reason why a person has to do it on Erev Shabbos. Ad kedei kach that I think the Darkei Tshuva quotes this a little bit, but he doesn't bring it down in full. But I'll read it to you the full quote. The Shut Binyamin Ze'ev, which is a very, very early Tshuva sefer. It's before the Ramah. He brings down from the tzava of Rabbi Eliezer Halevi, who's the grandfather of the Maril. So you're talking about someone from, the late 1300s. He brings down from his tzava, and in the tzava he wrote as follows, Bikashti me'oid michem, he says, I ask you please, the Sheyita Haruni, he's talking about after he's dead, when they're going to prepare his body, He says, "Sheyitaruni b'masun." You should prepare me slowly with patience. B'tayru b'nekiyas, beina etzbayis v'yadayim v'reglayim. He says, "V'yechufu roshi." You should comb, scrub my hair, comb it with a comb, kederech hachayim, the way you would do for someone who was alive. V'yitlu tziparne yaday v'raglai. Cut my fingernails, my fingers, and on my toenails. Kederech hachayim v'yitlu tziparne yaday v'ragli. It says, "Kedei she'avay tahar v'naki l'menucha." So I should come tahar v'naki, pure and clean when I go to menucha. Kemai, he says, shehalachti l'beis hakneses. Like I entered into Shabbos, every year of Shabbos, b'chol Shabbos, b'chafifo, b'netilas tiparnayim, b'sriko, b'bdikas nekavim. It says, prepare me to go to the Eilam Emes, to a makom kavod, the way I went into a makom kavod of Shabbos. The Darkei Tshuva quotes just a little bit of this tzava, but he doesn't quote the whole tzava. But this is what it says in the tzava about the Indian of kavod Shabbos. Now, additionally, for example, the Kolboi in the end of Siman Lamed Hey, the Kolboi brings that there was a Maisa with Eze Tzaddik, Eze Rebbe, who made a deal with his prized Talmud that after he goes up to Eilam Emes, he'll come down, in a dream and tell him how things are over there. And when he came down to visit the Talmud, he came down and on his face there was like a big blotch, big mark on his face. And the Talmud says, "No, Rebbe, what happened to you? What went wrong? What are you being punished for?" And he gave him a short list of things he's being punished for. And the third thing that he said he's being punished for was that I wasn't makbid to cut my nails every Erev Shabbos. I came into Erev Shabbos sometimes without my nails cut. I wasn't makbid. And that's a problem. Now, l'chayra, I just want to point out that if the reason for cutting the nails in Erev Shabbos is shalei kanas Shabbos k'shum menovel, you have to come in, properly prepared. L'chayra, that's an every Erev Shabbos thing. That's not something that, I don't know. Maybe you could say either way, but I would think that that's something that should be every single week. Meaning, even if your nails grow slow, or a person's, they're not mamish disgusting, but nails grow. And if you were going to a chasana or on a date or wherever, you'd cut your nails, you'd prepare yourself. So when you come to Shabbos, you prepare yourself. That's an every week thing. And taka, in some Rishonim, it says with the grace of diktuk, you have to do it every single week. The Kolboi is zicher being makbid, they have to do it every single week. The Mechaber Grada doesn't say if it's an every week thing. It's not an every week thing. The Mechaber says you should do it. That's tam number one. Now tam number two that's given is an interesting tam as well. The tam number two is from a Shlar Kaddish. The Shlar Kaddish brings down that as follows. He says, Roi l'chol adam, sheyinig kol yamav, litol tziparna b'chol erev Shabbos, mishum kveid Shabbos. That's reason number one, basic reason. V'oz mitzvah gereris mitzvah, he says. And then if you do it, mishum kveid Shabbos, there's a second Indian that you could get also, mitzvah gereris mitzvah, he says. Sheger mitzvah shniya b'netilas yadav, l'suda b'chol ha-shavua. You're making sure that every time you do netilas yadayim, the whole week for Yisudis, from Shabbos and on, there won't be any chatzitzis in your fingernails. Because if you have something black or some sort of dirt or something that's stuck under the fingernails, it could be a chatzitza. If you cut them and they're short, then it's not possible for anything to be there. So you're taking care for the whole week that you're not going to have any chatzitzas. So the Shlah says, another reason why we cut nails in Erev Shabbos is because we're going to have Sudis, you're going to wash, there's going to be a shayla of chatzitzas, so you don't want to have chatzitzas, so you cut your nails, so there shouldn't be anything stuck underneath them. Now, he says, additionally, the Shlah says, the third mitzvah that you get, he said, is it's possible when a person is eating, let's say he's eating fleshik, some fleshik get stuck under his nail. The next meal, he goes to eat something milchiks, and this is gross, and it gets into his food, and now you have basa b'chalav, so he says, mitzvah gereris mitzvah. You have nails that are cut, that are trimmed, besides for kavod Shabbos, you have no chatzitzas, you have no food being mixed, you're in a better matzav. Now, fine. So this is the second reason. Now, nafkamina of the second reason is an interesting nakuda that I want to point out. Let's hold on to it. I'll tell you what the nafkamina of this is in a reason. The third reason for cutting nails is the Kabbalistic reason. The third reason for cutting nails is as follows, and this comes from the Arizal. The Magen Avram quotes a piece of it, but in the different Kisvei Ari it's brought down more extensively. The Magen Avram over here in the Simon brings many Kabbalistic things, but this one he quotes a little bit of, and this comes from the Pri Eitz Chaim, where the Arizal writes as follows. He says, Hatziparnayim, the nails, mashu keneged habasar ubetachlis haschos. The part of the nail that's on the flesh bed of the finger, that's betachlis haschos. That's as far as things in the body represent, kedusha and tyra, and other things represent not kedusha, they represent kedusha. He says, but the part that's oidif, the part that sticks out above the flesh, that part is klippas. This is the Arizal. I'm reading you straight from Arizal. Arizal says, Zetzarach lachtech chaysam. Kisham nitlun hachitzainim v'yoinkin mimenu. From there, the chitzainim, the klippas, attach themselves to the nail, and they're yoinik from the nails. So that part of the nail, he says, you have to get rid of. And he quotes a Zayir as follows. And the shear that the Arizal says is the shear that's connected the basa, which is the same shear for chatzitzis, the same aligned shear. Now this is the tam, the Kabbalistic tam that's brought down b'shem the Arizal, that the nails, at least part of the nail, is very unholy. Now, in regards to that, there becomes another nafkamina. And this goes back to the Ropshitzer. Now, the shayla would be as follows. On Erev Shabbos, I'll be the Arizal, and this is above all my pay grade for sure, but probably everyone's, but according to the Arizal, on Erev Shabbos, when you shave or when you cut your hair, it has to be before Chatzos. Because here is klippas, here is bad things, and on Erev Shabbos after Chatzos is the zman when the ra is misgaber, whatever that means, and if a person cuts his hair during that time, he's like being misgarer in the ra. You're like starting up with the ra. That you can't do. So the Arizal is very makbid to cut his hair before Chatzos. Now there's a shtickle stira in the Kisvei Ari. The Arizal says in regards to cutting hair, the Arizal says it has to be before Chatzos. Because if you do it after Chatzos, that's hisgaros, that's a problem. That's very dangerous. But in regards to cutting the nails, which we just saw the Arizal says is for l'chayra, a similar reason, the Arizal seems to say cut the nails after Chatzos. It's brought down, Rav Chaim Vital says that the Arizal's minig was to cut them after Chatzos. And this is a problem. So now I have a tshuva. Where I'm getting this from is a tshuva from Rav Yaakov Hillel in Vayashav Hayam Chela Gimel of Vayashav Hayam. Rav Yaakov Hillel has a tshuva about this, where he goes through the different, erter in the Kisvei Ari, where it talks about the inyan of cutting nails and what they represent, the tzad hara, the tzad hatoiv. First, he attempts to say as follows: that nails are not. He attempts to make a lamda shechilik in Kabbala. He says as follows: he says here is be'etzem klippas. It's kulei ra. It has no toiv. It's kulei ra. So the chepezich with hair during that time, that you can't do. He says nails, they're not be'etzem ra. They're be'etzem whatever, maybe toiv. But the part that sticks out, the klippas have a way of attaching themselves to. So it's like an outside force that makes them ra. So b'chiyai gavna, you could maybe do it. Then he falls off that and he brings a shtickle stira from the Kisvei Ari about it, and I'll just read you what he brings. It's from the Ari in Shara Kavanis. The Rav Chaim Vital in Shara Kavanis writes as follows. He writes the Seder HaYom of the Arizal on Erev Shabbos, and he says as follows. He says the Arizal will do like this: Shnai mikra, tefillah, go to the mikveh, teimas tafshilin, he would taste all the food for Shabbos, tefillas mincha, so now we know it's after Chatzos, right? You just cleared Chatzos right there. Asiyas ha'erev, v'shuv kitzas hatzipernayim. Then he would cut his nails, l'fnei rechitzas panav yadav v'raglov. Before he would do a final wash of Panav Yad Raglov, he would cut his nails. So here you have from Rav Chaim Vital writing that the Arizal did it in this Seder. Then he brings a stira, fine, he gets to the kasha, and then he has a teretz as follows. And I'm not going to go into the details because I don't understand it, but what he establishes is if you pay attention to what I just read to you, to what the Arizal, to what the Rav Chaim Vital is writing, if you notice what comes first, he says Shnai Mikra, Tefillah, then Mincha, then cutting the nails. He says, you notice the Arizal put Tefillah first. He says, because if you put Tefillah first, Tefillah b'mikvah and Erev Shabbos weakens whatever the klipa of the nails are, and at that point, even though it would ki'ilu be hiskaros in the ra, you're allowed to do it. So l'chayra, what the Ropshitzer was referring to, when the Ropshitzer said Valtzes Vaich, he meant this Kisvei Ari, that if one goes to the mikvah before cutting his nails, then even after chatzos it's fine. Now, so just what we have over here is we have three different timing. We have like a purely covered Shabbos tam. We have like an additional tam, mishum chatzitas, mishum food getting stuck, and then we have the Kabbalistic tam. Now, just one more nakuda that's a very hoicha inyan about cutting nails and how it Shalzachais makes an afkamin over here is as follows. There's a famous Gemara. It's in Nida and it's in Ma'id Katan and it's Peshino Iktas in both places. But the Gemara in Nida says as follows. There are chamish dvarim that if someone does them, he's putting himself in sakana and it's his own problem. He has nobody to thank but himself. And one of them is if someone doesn't dispose of his nails properly. The Gemara says as follows. Hanoit Yitzi Parnov is Zarkin L'Shus HaRabim. So says the Gemara, why? And this is a famous thing. A pregnant woman can pass over them and she can lose her baby. And the Gemara brings some criteria, fine. Now the Gemara in Ma'id Katan, and over here also says as follows, Tanar Rabbanon, Gimel Dvarim Nemur B'tzipayirun. There's three levels that are established by nail cutting. Chassid, Sarfan Chassid, someone who burns them to dispose of the nail clippings is a Chassid. Kaivran Tzaddik, someone who buries them, fine, that's good, he's a Tzaddik. Zarkan Rasha, someone who throws them around, that's a Rasha. Now this is an Inyan, it's like a scary Inyan, a Kabbalistic Inyan about nails, that the method of disposal and the danger of not disposing of nails properly. But strangely, this is not brought down in Shulchan Aruch or the Rambam or any of the Sifrei Halacha. Even the Ramah and the Darkei Moshe, when he's Ma'arich about nails, does not bring this Gemara B'chlal about how to dispose of nails. So, interesting point, which the Maral, rather in a place, tells on it, and the Maral says that he was like coming off a conversation with someone. He says, I don't know why everyone has such a hard time understanding what Chazal say that it's dangerous. Just because you can't see the danger doesn't mean it's not dangerous. And he obviously was coming off a conversation with someone about this specific Gemara. Now, but there's an interesting nakuda. there's a minig that's brought down in some Chassidish Sfarim. It's actually the Shulchan Aruch Rav seems to paskin like it lahalacha. It comes from some earlier Sfarim. The Shulchan Aruch Rav seems to paskin like it lahalacha. It says as follows: that when a person cuts his nails off, the way to dispose of them is as follows: you take your knife that you use to cut your nails. We're talking back in the days when you used the knife, and you chip off a few chips of the wood from your table. Take those little shards of the wood. You make like a little bonfire with the shards of the wood. You put the nails in it, and you burn the nails like that. And the Inyan that's muskah that it's mentioned is because it's like, let the shulchan that you ate on properly all week, the hainu, there was no chatzitas in your nails, and you didn't have any basar b'chalav in your nails, and etc., be made that you disposed of your nails properly, like a Chanukah, a mitzvah once, like put them together and let them be made on each other. Now this is a reason that a little bit like ties together the Shla HaKadash's reason with the Kabbalistic elements of nail cutting. Meaning it takes the nakuda of nails being a sakana, and nails being like a zach that has klipas, and the nails being something that you have to remove because they're unholy, together with the reason of nails being pasha tricky to have there because you could have a chatzitza or you could have something else, and it puts these two timing together in like in a creative way. Now, so akapanim, just to summarize, we have these three reasons, and I think the nafkaminis, the chayr would be that you need to do it every single week. Meaning, in the Arizal's world, that it's out klippas, so there's a certain point when it becomes klippas, right? The Arizal clearly seems to be saying, you don't have to cut it down until here. So if your nails are really short and they grow slow and they're not coming above the fleshy part of the finger, you don't have to cut it every week. If you go according to the Tam Shlei Yikanos L'Shabbos Novel, I don't know, maybe a toss-up. If you go according, what I'm saying, just these nafkaminas l'chayr would come out from this thing. Now there is there's a few more nakudas that the Magen Avraham brings down that the Mishabura summarizes, and I'll just read them for a second here. Mishabura says as follows. Here, this is the Shaila. If you notice, when in the tzava from the Binyamin Zev, the Binyamin Zev said, he brought from the tzava that he said they should cut his fingernails and his toenails on the same day, so that he should be prepared like he was prepared every Shabbos. Now, the Mishabur brings down, and this is from the Magen Avraham, it's brought down in some svarim not to cut the fingernails and the toenails on the same day. The only time that a person can be makel to do that is in Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov. Says the Mishabur, in order to avoid this concern of cutting the fingernails and the toenails on the same day, says the Mishabur, you should cut your toenails on Thursday, and the fingernails on the 6th, on Erev Shabbos. Now this comes to the Mishabur quoting the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham brings this from a Sefer Magid Mesharim. I don't think it's that Magid Mesharim, but from the Sefer Magid Mesharim that you should do this separation. Now this, incidentally, is also a machlekes. The Maril says that it's usher to cut your nails on Thursday. And the Maril gives a very interesting reason. The Maril says because the teva of nails says the Maril, that they take 3 days to start growing back. So he says if you cut them on Thursday, so you have Thursday, Friday, Shabbos is when they start growing back. He says there's no bigger gnai than to cut your nails in a way that is on Shabbos is when they start growing back. So the Maril seems to say not to cut them both, not to cut on Thursday. Magen Avraham seems to say in order to separate them. So I saw a teretz from somebody, and this is interesting. It's again based on Kesef Arizal, a teretz but it's also practical. Toenails grow slower. That's the mitzias. Right? Toenails are not as something that needs to be trimmed every single day. So this din of not cutting, something that's going to end up going back in Shabbos, that's said on fingernails. Toenails is not a problem. So if you look at the Mishabura and the Magen Avraham, the Magen Avraham says specifically, and this is a diak, the Magen Avraham says, "V'hanachin sheyaketz min raglayim b'yem chamishi min yadayim b'yem shishi." The raglayim are the one that you bump up. The raglayim is not a concern even of the Maril. You have nothing to worry about. And this is some interesting nakudas about nail cutting. There are more related to the order and when Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, but maybe we'll continue. Okay.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.